to this discussion by relating youth to the challenges. Okay, I'm getting feedback. Valencia, could you please help me just mute everyone else? Okay, yes, so participants who contribute to discussions by relating youth.
Abinayda, please unmute. You've also been muted.
Okay, so I was saying participants may also contribute to the discussions by relating youth challenges to their own country context and perceptions of collaboration to just help highlight the multifaceted nature of experiences within the continent, because we do understand to say we have different experiences from the countries that we come from, and it's not one jacket fits all. So even with the strategies that we're coming up, we have national AfCFTA strategies because we want to make sure that these strategies are country specific. Then module 3, which will come on July 13th, will focus on opportunities versus challenges, assessing the impacts and hurdles of the AfCFTA. So this will critically assess the challenges with trade facilitation, rules of origin, loss in national revenue, corruption, existing ties with other African countries, public opinion, and so on and so forth. So these terms, for those of you that are new to the AfCFTA, may be strange to you, but these are terms that we'll get to explain to you even as we move along with the course. So we'll discuss all these different things that threaten the achievement of the AfCFTA objectives. So these discussions will include the problems specifically brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the impacts of intra-regional trade and overall African economic development. And the fourth module, which comes on August 10th, envisioning the future of the AfCFTA, will be our final module, and it will seek to tie together all the knowledge that has been previously gained about the AfCFTA, youth engagement, and its potential challenges to help us imagine what a successful future of the AfCFTA entails, how young people can play a role in this, and how young people stand to benefit. So it will begin with some of the achievements and ongoing projects that have been facilitated by this trade agreement, the AfCFTA, in various African countries like South Africa, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and other countries since its implementation in 2021. So this is how we're going to move along with this program. So we'll have this workshop course series online. So yeah, they will be entirely online. Then modified sessions will be held in person during our Umoja Africa campaign Youth for AfCFTA Week, which will happen in countries where YALDA has branches. So each workshop will run for approximately 2 hours every month on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. GMT, 7 p.m. CET. I think there's a mistake there on the slide, but it should say, I think this is 8 p.m. East African time. So it's 5 p.m. GMT, 7 p.m. CET, and 8 p.m. EAT East African time. And these sessions will just serve as a live interactive platform for discussions about the AfCFTA, and expert speakers will provide insights into the various aspects of the course, and we'll also have interactive Q&A sessions, and we will provide feedback within the platform, and just make sure that we make it as engaging as possible. And for participants who wish to get certificates for attending the workshops, pre and post work will be required before each module, and a short quiz will, with a stipulated pass grade, administered following the end of each module. So at the end of each module, Our facilitators will help us carry out these assessments, which are short quizzes, and we'll have a pass mark for each of those. So only those that are successful are the ones that will be eligible to get a certificate at the end of the program. So the presenters will run this pause, anonymously gauge the understanding of the course by each of the participants, and at the end you'll be presented with a quiz which will comprise of 10 multiple choice questions and a homework assignment which will be submitted as a document. So participants will also be presented with a survey at the end of each module, just to help us understand how you engaged with the module and the coursework the facilitators provided. And like I mentioned, our successful participants will receive a certificate of completion at the end of the program. Okay, I think I already went through some of those things. So I'll just, the homework, you'll be given a homework, a written assignment of between 600 and 800 words. And this will be submitted through a shared form as a document upload. And the assignment will be assessed, and you also have to do personal research on the AfCFTA. So this assignment should be sent in 1 week before the next module. So you have to make sure that you submit your work 1 week before the next module, just to give the facilitators enough time to assess your submission. And like I mentioned, for the YALDA Umoja Africa campaign, we have a series of activities that we're doing to feed into this campaign. So just to help us understand what knowledge young people already have on the AfCFTA, what challenges currently exist among the youth in terms of, maybe trade within the continent, we've launched our youth survey. So this survey focuses on the different aspects of the AfCFTA agreement and how youth could relate to and just be able to understand the agreement. So we encourage young people from diverse backgrounds to please take part in this survey. It's already been put out. I'm sure some of you have already received that email. If not, we are going to share the link to the survey again, so that you just be able to share your ideas, thoughts, and concerns about the AfCFTA. So like I mentioned, we are doing this just to help us gain understanding on how the youth have interacted with the AfCFTA ideas, and also just its implementation initiatives across Africa. If you go on our social media, you will see this poster. This is the poster for the survey. So yeah, you can just go look for that, and you'll be able to answer the survey using the link provided there. Yes, so the survey will be in English, French, and also Portuguese. And we've made the survey in such a way that you can be able to take it on a laptop, on a desktop, on tablets, on smartphones, and it will not take much of your time. And also, there's something in it for you. So if you answer the survey very carefully, with attention, not just for the sake of answering it or getting something, you'll be rewarded with various packages. So you stand a chance to win amazing data packages or even a smartphone. So please go ahead and answer that survey. These are our links, and you can see we have 3 different languages there. So we'll provide these links. I'm going to put them in the chat, and also you can go on our social media and you'll find them, or please check your email. For those that are already in our YALDA network, we've shared these links already. So yes, this is about it. This is about our AfCFTA course and the youth survey that we are conducting as YALDA together with our partners. I'll hand over back to Nadia to take us through the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Abenaida. Thank you for that. Just for other people's information, we have interpretation in English and French at the bottom of your screen. You can click on the interpretation button. And we've had now an introduction to the whole course, as well as what we're going to cover today. Before we go further, I want to ask Valencia if you can put the first poll up that we have to get an idea of the participants that are here with us. And we see we have many of you. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'll be taking interventions and questions towards the end of the program so that we can get through the content, as this is a training. So here you can answer the question we have here on regarding gender and regarding on whether you're currently engaged in a small or medium enterprise or you're an entrepreneur. So please fill that out quickly, and we can see the profile of participants we have today. I'll just give you a minute to do that. In the meantime, I would like to welcome Marie-Providence, who is a gender, youth, and trade expert at the AfCFTA Secretariat, who is very generously taking her precious time with us today to give us the opening remarks. Marie-Providence works, as I said, on gender and youth issues in the AfCFTA Secretariat, and she has been a great collaborator with us, as has the Secretariat been on this campaign and on other youth initiatives and initiatives around gender that we've done. So I'm very pleased to welcome Marie-Providence to give us opening remarks. Over to you, Marie.
Thank you, Nadia. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
Good. So good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are, distinguished colleagues and guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction, Nadia. So I will just go ahead and give my welcoming remarks to this very important course. And on behalf of His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AfCFTA Secretariat, I would like to express our gratitude for allowing the AfCFTA Secretariat to engage on a matter that is pivotal to the achievements of the goals and aspirations of the African continent, that is the economic empowerment of the African youth through trade. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development in Africa, YALDA, and partners for organizing these courses, which aim to improve the youth understanding of the AfCFTA. His Excellency Wamkele Mene is a champion of women and youth empowerment, and the Secretariat remains committed to working in collaboration with women, youth, and other key stakeholders towards ensuring that the AfCFTA delivers its promise to improve the lives of all African people. Now, what is the AfCFTA? The AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, as you all know as AfCFTA, is a trade bloc that brings together 55 African Union member states, thus opening a market of about 1.3 billion people. Some of the key general objectives of the AfCFTA are to create a single and liberalized market for goods and services facilitated by the movement of persons, contribute to the movement of capital and natural persons, and facilitate investment, building on the initiatives and developments in AfCFTA state parties and regional economic communities, lay the foundation for the establishment of a continental customs union, which means that under the customs union, AfCFTA state parties will impose a common external tariff on third parties, promote and attain sustainable and inclusive socioeconomic development, gender equality, and structural transformation of state parties, enhance the competitiveness of the economies of AfCFTA state parties within the continent and in the global market, promote industrial development through diversification, regional value chain development, agriculture development, and food security, and resolve the challenges of overlapping membership and expedite the regional and continental integration process. It should be recalled that the AfCFTA is part of a broader agenda to fully integrate the continent as stipulated in the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, otherwise known as the Abuja Treaty. With regards to the scope of the agreement, The agreement establishing the AfCFTA covers a wide range of issues, namely trade in goods and trade in services that are normally referred to as phase 1 issues. Then it also covers investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policies, which are phase 2 issues. And these are specifically provided for in the AfCFTA agreement. Additional issues that have been included by the Assembly of Head of States and Governments of the African Union include digital trade and women and youth in trade. With regards to the status of negotiations and ratification, as of May 2022, the AfCFTA agreement has been signed by 54 out of 55 AU member states. Only Eritrea is yet to sign the agreement, and the agreement has also been ratified by 43 AU member states, Morocco being the 43rd state party to have deposited its instrument of ratification. It should be noted that the AfCFTA agreement is actually one of the few African Union agreements which had with a high rate of ratification within 3 years of entry into force, which we are due to celebrate on the 30th of May 2022. With regards to the timeline of the AfCFTA process, just to make participants understand where this process began, on the 1st of January 2012, the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments of the African Union decided to fast track the establishment of the AfCFTA, and the negotiations of the AfCFTA began on the 15th of June 2015. The negotiations took a number of years, and on the 21st of March 2018, the AfCFTA agreement was opened for signature, and other related agreement instruments such as the Protocol on Free Movement of Persons was also opened for signature. The AfCFTA agreement entered into force on the 30th of May 2019, and the Assembly of Head of States and Governments of the African Union launched the start of trading under the AfCFTA for the 1st of January 2021. With regards to the status of negotiations under trade in goods, 45 schedules of tariff concessions have been received so far, and the rules of origin have been negotiated at 87.7%, which means that 87.7% of tariff lines have been covered. Some of the pending issues that are yet to be finalized by state parties include the automotive, the textile or clothing industry sector, sugar, and tobacco. It's important to understand that the rules of origin are very critical to a trade agreement because they determine the criteria that must be met for a product to qualify for tariff preferences under the AfCFTA. Put differently, they confer an economic nationality of a product by determining the minimum level of processing of a product. The tariff liberalization of trade in goods also follow a specific arrangement. You have non-sensitive products, which are meant to be liberalized at 90%. Of course, there are different schedules of liberalization, depending on the level of development of countries. So it is expected that least developed countries, African least developed countries, will completely eliminate tariffs within a period of 10 years, while non-LDCs are expected to do so within a period of 5 years. With regards to sensitive products, which cover 77% of the total products, they are expected to be fully liberalized, of course, over a longer period of time, which means that complete elimination for LDCs is expected to be completed within 13 years. And 10 years for non-LDCs. And now we have excluded products which constitute the 3%, or the remaining 3%, are to be excluded from liberalization. It's important to note, of course, that the list of sensitive and excluded products will not be homogeneous in all AfCFTA state parties. Therefore, some criteria have been set to ensure that certain products are not excluded arbitrarily. Some of these criteria include the contribution to employment, revenue contribution, export earnings, food security, national security, fiscal revenue, livelihood, and industrialization. It's important to note that the list of excluded products is expected to be reviewed every 5 years. With regards to trading services, we have received so far 46 schedules of specific commitments in the 5 priority sectors, which are the business services, the transport, telecommunication services, financial services, and tourism. Once approved by the Assembly, by the AU Assembly, this means that 46 countries will be ready to liberalize their services market. With regards to phase 2 negotiations on investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy are currently ongoing, and the deadline of September 2022 has been set to finalize all negotiations. And the additional instruments to be negotiated, namely the Protocol on Digital Trade and the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade, are also currently ongoing. And I'm happy to announce that the inaugural meeting of the Committee on Women and Youth in Trade is scheduled to take place in the coming month. With regards to the supporting, we would also, I'd like also to mention that in order to facilitate the implementation of the AfCFTA, supportive tools and measures have been and are currently in the process of being developed. These include interventions to streamline customs, transit, and trade facilitation through the harmonization of customs procedures and processes, digitization, and the establishment of one-stop border posts in accordance with the relevant annexes of the Protocol on Trading Goods. It is also envisaged that a simplified trade regime for small cross-border traders, for small cross-border trade, that is the scheme is currently implemented in some regional economic communities such as COMESA, the EAC, and ECOWAS, is expected to also be rolled out in other regional economic communities which are yet to implement it. You also have the AfCFTA online non-tariff barriers reporting, monitoring, and eliminating mechanism, which provides a platform for the private sector to report any non-tariff barriers encountered at border points, and establishes an institutional structure to ensure the efficient follow-up and resolution of NTBs that are reported. You have the African Trade Gateway, which provides trade information that are relevant to the private sector. The African Trade Observatory, or ATO, which also provides reliable trade data to inform policy decisions and monitor the implementation of the AfCFTA. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which was launched in January 2022, is also designed to facilitate cross-border payment in African currencies. In other words, with PAPs, traders will no longer need to use foreign currencies for their cross-border transactions within the continent. And of course, you also have the adjustment fund that has been established to alleviate revenue losses that may be encountered by AfCFTA state parties as a result of the implementation of the AfCFTA. A comprehensive course such as this is important to improve the understanding of the AfCFTA in general and the requirements to be able to trade under the AfCFTA regime, such as improving under the understanding of the rules of origin and other issues that are covered by some of the annexes to the Protocol on Trading Goods, such as Annex 5 on non-tariff barriers. Just to cite a few, of course, I will not go into specific because I believe that my colleagues will explain these issues extensively. So equipping the youth with accurate and relevant information will improve the quality of engagement on the role of the youth in the economic integration of the continent, and more specifically in the implementation of the AfCFTA in the policy space. Moreover, the course is also timely as the Committee on Women and Youth in Trade will soon begin the negotiations of the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade. The protocol presents a unique opportunity to consolidate the proposed solutions into an innovative legal framework that seeks to address constraints the youth face when trading across borders on the continent, thus enhancing their capacity to utilize market opportunities created by the AfCFTA. The information provided during the course will further equip the youth to reflect on additional measures to support the effective implementation of the Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade. I take this opportunity, of course, to reassure you that in the spirit of inclusiveness, The AfCFTA Secretariat will continue to engage the youth on the AfCFTA and more specifically on the protocol on women and youth in trade. I wish you very fruitful sessions and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marie-Merci. It's always great to have you with us in these sessions and to be able to engage with the Secretariat on these important issues. So you've all heard the AfCFTA is the largest free trade area in the world by membership, 54 state parties. And you've also heard that there will be a protocol on women and youth. So there will be an opportunity to integrate youth issues directly into the agreement. And I know, Marie, you've given us quite an extensive overview of the agreement in just 10 minutes. Not to worry, participants, we will go through in detail a lot of the areas that Marie has outlined. So I would like to now invite my colleague Malet. For those of you who are just joining us, by the way, my name is Nadia. I'm a trade policy expert at the UN Economic Commission for Africa, the African Trade Policy Center, and my colleague Malet as well. We're both from ATPC, and she'll be giving the first presentation on why the AfCFTA, what are the objectives, the structure and the governance, the status of the negotiation and the implementation, and the benefits we're expecting to see. And maybe I can also ask Valencia in the meantime if you could get ready to show us the results of the first poll after Malet's presentation. So Malet, please, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Nadia. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can. And I'll just mention to participants, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll have an opportunity to get to them towards the end of the session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Malet Girma. I'm a trade expert at the UNECA at the African Trade Policy Center. And I will give you an overview of the AfCFTA. First, I will explain why the AfCFTA, why is it important for the African continent. After that, we'll see what is the scope of the agreement. Then we'll give an update of where we are with the ratification, but also the negotiations. It was already mentioned during the opening remarks by the AfCFTA Secretariat, but I'll try to go a bit in details. And then we'll see what are the expected impacts of the AfCFTA based on results from ECA empirical studies. So why the AfCFTA, first of all? Actually, the goal of the AfCFTA is to eliminate or to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers. So amongst the 55 African member states, and the idea is to create a single market for goods and services to facilitate also the movement of persons. This means that Africa will access to a wider market. So the AfCFTA will actually enhance intra-African trade. It will enhance also competition, promote industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development, but also facilitate investment, which will in turn result in job creation, food security, and so on. What is the scope of the AfCFTA? It's important to have in mind that the scope of the AfCFTA is quite broad. The agreement includes different protocols that are negotiated in two phases. So the first phase includes the protocol on trading goods, which aims to create a liberalized market through progressive elimination of tariff and non-tariff barriers, as I mentioned earlier. The tariff barriers are the taxes that governments put on import or sometimes also on exports. And then we have the non-tariff barriers that involves rules and regulations which make trade more difficult, like quotas, for example. The protocol on trade in goods also includes several annexes, including trade facilitations, among others. Then we have the protocol on trade in services that aims to liberalize the trade in services. And still in phase one, we have the protocol on dispute settlement. This is to regulate disputes that may arise between state parties of the AfCFTA.
Administrator, can you please mute participant?
Then we have the negotiations on phase two issues, which aim to create a supporting environment for the respect of intellectual property, rights to the facilitation of intra-African investment, and the treatment of anti-competitive issues. The phase two also includes digital trade and the women and youth in trade protocols that has been added not long ago. So besides the protocols, there are 5 instruments that were established to facilitate the implementation of the agreement, including the rules of origin, which identify a product, which identify whether a product is considered to be manufactured in Africa within the AfCFTA country, or whether it can benefit from the preferential treatment provided by the agreement. This will be explained more in detail in the next session that will be presented by my colleague Komi from UNDP. Then we have an online portal for tariff negotiations. There's also an online mechanism for monitoring, reporting, and elimination of non-tariff barriers, which allows traders to report on NTBs they come across when trading within the African continent under the AfCFTA. We have also the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, which is a financial platform that facilitates a direct transaction in the currency used within the Africa continent. In other words, PAPS allows African currencies to be convertible without having to use other currencies such the dollar, the euros, and among others. So the PAPS was launched for commercial use on the 13th January 2022. And at last, we have the African Trade Observatory, which is an online platform that provides data to inform businesses and policy decisions, and also to monitor the implementation process of the AfCFTA agreement, and as well as the impact of the agreement. So as mentioned earlier, the AfCFTA intends to liberalize trade by progressively removing tariff and non-tariff barriers for goods and services. So what are the modalities for the liberalization? When it comes to trade in goods, each member state shall eliminate 97% of their tariff lines. The agreement recognizes 3 categories of product. First of all, there is the product called non-sensitive, which should represent 90% of goods to be liberalized. Of course, it will be gradually over 5 years for non-least developed countries, so non-LDCs, and 10 years for LDCs. So what does it mean? For example, if Côte d'Ivoire, which is a non-LDCs country, wants to liberalize ginger, when Côte d'Ivoire imports ginger from another AfCFTA country, after 5 years, Côte d'Ivoire will no longer apply custom duties on ginger. So there will not be any tax on ginger imported from another AfCFTA country. Then we have the sensitive products that will be liberalized over a period, a longer period. So 10 years for non-LDCs, and then 13 years for LDCs. And finally, we have the products that are excluded from liberalization and for which custom duties will not be removed. And they represent 3% of the traded products. As mentioned also during the opening remarks, these products are reviewed every 5 years. And to characterize a product as sensitive or excluded, criteria such food security, national security, tax revenue, livelihoods, and industrialization can be used. So to help you better understand the modality for trading goods, first of all, it should be noted that the reductions are linear. So this means, for example, if a non-sensitive product is exported from an AfCFTA country to a non-LDC country, if we apply 25% in the first year, then we will have to reduce 5% every year until the rate is 0. So there is on that product. So for example, if we start in 2021 with 25%, we will reduce by the following year. So in 2022, we'll be at 20%. And then in 2023, we'll be at 15%. In 2024, at 10% until we reach 0, which will be, of course, in 2026 after 5 years. And if the export is to an LDC country where there is a longer, we have a longer years to reduce, we will have over 10 years, which means we have to reduce 2.5% every year until we get to 0 after 10 years. And this same logic is actually applied to the also so-called sensitive products over a longer year. However, I mean, what is really important here is to remember that 97% of traded products will be progressively liberalized, and there will be no more custom duties on those products after the liberalization years that are that the modalities gave. So of course, as mentioned earlier as well, the reduction of tariff will also be complemented by the progressive elimination of non-tariff barriers. And when it comes to trade and services, so the idea here is to also liberalize progressively trade and services among AfCFTA state parties, with an objective to strengthen the competitiveness of services and encourage domestic and foreign investments as well. And there are 4 modes. So the first mode is the cross-border supply. So this is the possibility for a non-resident supplier to supply services cross-border into an AfCFTA and another AfCFTA member country. Then we have the mode 2, which is consumption abroad. So this is the freedom for an AfCFTA member country resident to be able to purchase services in another AfCFTA member country. Then we have the mode 3, which is commercial presence. This is the opportunity for a service supplier of one AfCFTA member country to establish, operate, or expand the commercial presence in another AfCFTA member country, such as a branch, agency, among others. And then we have the last one, which is the mode 4, presences of natural person. So this is the possibility offered for the entry or a temporary stay in an AfCFTA member country for an individual coming from another AfCFTA member country in order to supply a service. So the 5 priority services sector of the AfCFTA are the communication service, financial services, business services, tourism services, and travel services and transportation services. Okay, so what is the status of AfCFTA ratification and negotiations? So as mentioned again earlier during the opening remarks, the AfCFTA agreement is established in 2018, and the negotiations started in June 15, 2019. The AfCFTA entered into force on May 30, 2019, and it is operationalized since January 1, 2021. So as of today, 54 out of the 55 African Union member states have signed the agreement. Only Eritrea is yet to sign. And we have 44 member states who has ratified and deposited their instrument of ratification. Here it's important to note that legally the rights and provisions and also obligations of the AfCFTA apply to the countries that have deposited their instrument of ratification. However, negotiations are still not finalized. To date, regarding the trading goods, 43 tariff offers have been submitted with consolidated submission from 4 customs unions, which are the CEMAC, EAC, ECOWAS, and SACU. And of course, 10 individual countries. And as also mentioned earlier, the rules of origin negotiations are not yet finalized. We are now at 80.7% of tariff lengths that has been agreed. Concerning the protocol on trade and services, so the 5 priority sectors, I have mentioned it earlier, are financial, transport, telecommunication, technology, professional, and tourism services. And 46 African countries have submitted their services offers, with also 3 CEMAC, EAC, and ECOWAS have presented consolidated services offers. And when it comes to the phase 2 issues, negotiations have started not long ago. And as mentioned earlier, also during the opening remark, it is expected that negotiations on intellectual investment, intellectual property rights, and competition to be finalized by September 2022. So here is to show you what is the impact of the AfCFTA. And according to recent findings, the UNECA, the benefits from the AfCFTA is expected to be centered on intra-African trade. If the AfCFTA is effectively implemented, intra-African trade in 2045 would be expected to be about 35% higher than if there was no AfCFTA. And significant gains are expected in all main sectors with strong potential to promote industrialization. For instance, intra-African trade in agri-food is expected to increase by 41.1%, services by 39.2%, industry 39%, and energy and mining by 61.1%. So in that sense, the AfCFTA would contribute to reduce the current trade dependence of Africa on its external partners, such as the EU, the States, and This graphic is to show that it's actually to show in which subsector the top 10 gains in intra-African exports will be with the effective, of course, implementation of the AfCFTA. And these are exports in milk and dairy, wood and paper, chemical, rubber, plastic and pharmaceutical products, vehicles and transports, processed food, metals, cereal and crops, and other manufactured products, as well as refined oils and sugar. An important point is that an inclusive implementation of the AfCFTA is key for the success of this agreement. There are many disadvantages that are commonly shared by women, but also and the youth. So it can be in terms of access to opportunities, in terms of resources, in terms also of facing higher trade barriers. In that sense, the AfCFTA recognizes the importance of women and youth in trade in Africa. First of all, what we mentioned earlier, the newly included protocol for women and youth in trade acknowledge this. The protocol will constitute a critical step in addressing issues of women and young people in the implementation of the agreement. But also the Assembly of the African Union certain extraordinary session that was held in December 2020 committed to broaden inclusiveness in the operation of the AfCFTA through intervention that support young Africans, women, and also small and medium enterprises, and also integrate informal cross-border traders into formal economy by implementing simplified trade regimes. Besides, the AfCFTA can provide new opportunities for women in youth, better employment opportunities, better wage and working conditions, especially in the informal sectors. So here it's really to say of the AfCFTA are not automatic. The provisions of the agreement need to be translated into national but also regional framework. So member states need to continue ratification of the agreement. It is important to develop an AfCFTA strategy with clear action plans that can be implemented. And in this regard, ECA is currently working with over 40 countries and works in developing their AfCFTA national strategies, but also in implementing some of their priority action plans. It is also crucial to invest in skills development and education, including for women and youth. A key point also is to recognize the important role of the private sector, but also development partners, and invest in sectors that is important to them. And that is strategic for Africa, and with, of course, potential of regional value chain. So to conclude, the AfCFTA is expected to provide an opportunity for African countries to diversify their economies, scale production capacity, and widen the range of products made in Africa. For this, an effective implementation of of the agreement is really key. Also, it's very important to have in mind that as I said before, expected outcomes of the AfCFTA will not come overnight. So efforts are needed at all levels. Besides, it's important to develop implementation strategies to maximize benefits of the agreement and minimize potential risk at national but also regional levels. Inclusive implementation is also crucial, and it's important also to have the private sector as the center of the implementation of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Malat, for that very comprehensive understanding of where we are right now and where we're going. If I could keep you here briefly, I'll just summarize. I mean, I think we've heard, of course, the agreement is focused on intra-African trade, and that's trade between the 54 state parties. We've heard that it addresses tariff and non-tariff barriers. So tariffs being the costs of importing and exporting, as well as the non-tariff barriers, which is all of the other barriers to trade. We've heard about some critical tools like the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System that allows you to now trade in your own local currencies across borders with each other. So there's some game changers in there for you, I think, as youth. We've also heard about the importance of being able to provide services across borders. Again, critical, youth being, highly represented in service industries. We've also talked about the negotiations of the agreement. So when the state parties of the agreement try to come together to negotiate on what the rules are. We've heard about ratification, which means they actually pass it through parliament once they've agreed, or pass it through in local structures. We've heard about, the negotiations and the offers of tariff lines, which means where the countries are going to make the offers on what the taxes are going to be and the tariffs are going to be, and how quickly they will be able to remove those tariffs over time. We've heard about the key sectors that could benefit. And so I think as youth, you can already start to understand why you should care about the agreement and how it will support you. So I would invite you in the chat maybe to discuss amongst yourselves how you think the agreement will support you now that you've heard a little bit more about it. And Malat, we have one interesting question, which is what are the modalities put in place to compensate for the loss of revenue as a result of the removal of tariff barriers? Can you address that question?
Can you hear me? Yes, Nadia, please, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
The question is, what are the modalities put in place to compensate for the loss of revenue as a result of the removal of trade barriers? And just before you answer, can we please mute the other participants who are not speaking? And also, Valencia, if you can prepare the results of the first poll. Thank you. Okay, Malat, over to you. Yeah.
Yes, I think for the loss, first of all, I mean, the loss are not expected to be very high, and also they're to be compensated by the gains that the country will have through the liberalization of the intra-African trade. So this is the first answer, and also there is, I have to check, but Afreximbank, if I'm not mistaken, will provide some support for countries. The modalities are not yet very clear, but there will be a support from the Afreximbank for some countries based on the modalities they will put in place for the revenue loss.
Great, thank you. Yes, so you can also look up, the participants, you can look up the adjustment facility so that yes, there's that mechanism in place.
Thank you.
With Afreximbank. Yeah, no, that's great. So, and as you said, the losses are not expected to be quite substantial in any case. Okay, so now I would like us to move on to the next presentation, which will be delivered by Komi from UNDP. And just Komi, while you're getting set up, we'll look at the profile of the participants that we have here. So we've got quite a good gender balance here, I would say 47% female, 53% male. And we have actually quite a few of you who are operating already in small and medium-sized enterprises or are entrepreneurs, 56%. So hopefully you're able to see both if you're entrepreneurs or SMEs, or if you're doing other types of engagements, how you can benefit from the AfCFTA. So we encourage you to look from your own perspective and feel free to ask us questions in the chat. And as I said, we'll get to them also towards the end. So thanks. Komi is a regional program advisor on AfCFTA at UNDP, and of course we collaborate very frequently, and so we're very happy to have you here with us, Komi, despite the challenges that you've had. So we're very grateful that you're able to join us. Over to you.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So greetings from Gaborone. We just concluded 3 days event, trade forum for many SMEs from the continent. So so the objective is really to see how we can support SMEs. But of course, before becoming SMEs, we know most of those SMEs had ideas like most of you, I would imagine, as young people. And it's a pleasure for us at UNDP to be associated to this capacity building program by YALDA, and great also to collaborate with my former colleagues, Nadia, Mahlet, and others. Now, I'm going to take us through what usually defined as rules of origin when it comes to the trade concept and definition. Then we briefly speak to the AfCFTA rule of origin in terms of framework. What I want to put on the table first for our participant here is that Mahlet mentioned that the AfCFTA is going to actually reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers. So in terms of tariff barriers, we expect reduction in the tariffs of goods that will be considered as made in Africa. So what are the conditions actually for your good that you are processing to be considered as made in Africa within the AfCFTA terms for you to be able to enjoy the AfCFTA lower or reduced tariff benefit? That's actually the concept of rules of origin. To start quickly, I want to show you these two graphs based on what actually East African countries are exporting when we focus on dairy product. The issue of milk, EAC, in terms of Eastern Africa produce a lot of milk. But when you see the first graph is actually the export of dairy products that are from Eastern Africa. In blue, the export to the world. In red, the export to Africa, and then green, export to within Eastern African region. If you see the length of the green bar vis-a-vis the red bar, that means actually the gap between the two are actually what Eastern African countries are exporting beyond their region. The fact that the green bar is very close to the red bar means most of the dairy products, milk and derivatives are actually traded within East Africa. When you move on the right side, you see actually the amounts of dairy product that the continent as Africa is importing from the world in blue, from European Union in red, from New Zealand in green, and then the rest, you have also what is being imported from Africa. But this is just to tell you that most of the continent, a part of the continent, are continue to importing milk and other products from the rest of the world, EU and New Zealand, while there is a huge offer in Eastern Africa. So actually what the AfCFTA is trying to do is to really help address those issues for the continent to trade more. Now, when it's come to the rule of origin, actually, the rules of origin will determine the economic nationality of a product, which means what are the conditions actually you might need to understand when you are processing a product before you can get actually the tariff preferential treatment under an agreement. These rules are usually classified in two big groups. The first one is usually called main origin criteria. These are also divided into wholly obtained goods. For instance, if you produce or you obtain a good wholly from one of the AfCFTA member states, let's say your milk is coming from the animals that are grown in, let's say, Kenya. So from there, if you produce your milk, that your milk is fully obtained or wholly obtained within Kenya, then Kenya being part of the AfCFTA, you will be able to export the processed milk, for instance, to Ethiopia, to South Africa, with the reduced tariffs under the agreement. The second criteria is usually termed as substantial transformation. I'm not going into technical discussions here, but what you need to know is when you talk about substantial transformation, you can import inputs, maybe cocoa beans or coffee from Brazil. But if you significantly add value in terms of processing into chocolate, for instance, that will be considered again as the chocolate originating from the AfCFTA area, because the cocoa beans you got from Brazil has been significantly transformed within the continent, the free trade area. And there are also other consideration criteria, including minimal operation. In some sector, for instance, oil, they will agree that the product originates from the AfCFTA member states if you process a minimal operation, and these are also listed. But let's move to specific example. Look at the first example, for instance. When you take a cocoa that is grown in Cote d'Ivoire and processed in chocolates in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, note that Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, they have ratified the AfCFTA agreement, so they are part of the agreement. And then the chocolate you obtain is now exported to Ethiopia. So because you have processed the cocoa into chocolate wholly in Cote d'Ivoire or partially in Cote d'Ivoire, then in Ghana, which are both AfCFTA member states, then the chocolate you export to Ethiopia will get the preferential tariff treatment under the AfCFTA. The second example in the middle is when you get a cocoa that is grown and processed into cocoa butter in Brazil, then what you do, as African, you import it and you just package it in Cote d'Ivoire. In that case, you have not really added value. So if you re-export the packaged product into South African market, because most of the processing have happened actually in Brazil, you will not be able to get the preferential treatment because packaging is not significant in terms of transformation. And you remember, a few minutes ago, I spoke about substantial transformation. So packaging is not a substantial transformation. In a nutshell, for you to understand that rule of origins comes when you, for instance, you are mixing, for instance, X quantity of cotton from Burkina Faso and Y quantity of cotton from India, and then you want to, you blend them in maybe into cotton yarn. So what actually, which value, proportionate value is coming from the AfCFTA member state will determine if you comply to the rules of origin or not. So these are technique calculations that are done, but most of SMEs actually within the continent, because they use inputs from the continent, usually they comply to the rule of origin. But this, the discussion on rule of origin can be more detailed, and we'll be happy to discuss later in detail for those who are SMEs or those who are planning to start producing within an AfCFTA market. In terms of rule of origin under now the AfCFTA, the rules, as I said, are being applied whether you wholly obtain a product from one of the AfCFTA country. For instance, if you have live animals born and raised, for instance, in Niger, and then you are exporting that animal or the meat from that animal to, let's say, Cameroon or Gabon, these products are fully obtained in the country, so it's a made in Africa product. Or if you are transforming cotton lint to fabrics, or cocoa beans to chocolate, and so, those are substantial transformation, and your processed product will get the preferential tariffs under the AfCFTA. What I'm showing here are those operations actually that will not confer origin under the AfCFTA. For instance, when you simply clean a product, you wash it, you cannot say this has been significantly transformed. Let's say you import fish from China, and you just clean it, wash it, put in a package under your brand name. This is not a kind of significant value addition. So you will never get the AfCFTA preferential tariffs if you do such operation. So these are very detailed operations that are listed for the businesses to understand actually which kind of operations will never give you the right to get lower tariffs under the free trade area. Again, just showing some of the document actually that you can fill as SMEs if you believe you comply to the rules of origin. And in each country, you have a certifying authority. Some countries, they might be custom union, custom authorities, or some countries can be chamber of commerce that will come and check the way you are producing your good, and then, to determine if you apply to the AfCFTA rules of origin or not. So I just want to stop here, and of course, this is quite quick to understand the rule of origin, but I hope you were able to start getting the understanding, and we will have a pool of I think question also to see if you got the main points I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Komi. That's a really, really practical understanding of the rules of origin and, which products are eligible under the agreement for reduced and removed tariffs. We've heard about those who are goods that are of main origin, those who are wholly obtained, and we've also heard about what constitutes sufficient transformation. We've got a couple of questions for you that I'd like to ask you quickly before we move to the next part, which I think we've got one question that asks about who determines whether a certain good is wholly obtained or substantially transformed. And I think you answered in different countries, it's either the Chamber of Commerce or the Customs Authority. It can vary by country. But the follow-up question is, do they have the capacity to do this? And the second question is, interesting, if an African company is relocated to another continent and the products are marked made in Africa, will these products benefit from preferential tariffs in Africa?
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the second question is quite interesting, but to come to the first one, in terms of capacity, some countries might have more capacity to be able to evaluate, rule of origins compliance than others, of course. Now, the issue usually comes when you face a very complex process. For instance, if you consider cocoa beans, cocoa value chain is quite simple. You have the beans. Beans are processed into powder. You have powder, butter, and then you have chocolate. So that one is easy. Now, when you take chemicals, chemicals are more complex, for instance. So you need to know the value of your raw materials. And when you add other chemicals, you have to also estimate their value. So those are more, of course, as I'm saying, some countries have more capacity, but note that there are also a lot of programs of capacity building. I know ECA has done a lot for custom authority in countries to understand the rules of origins. A number of institutions are doing it, and that gap will also be closed. In terms of the companies, so actually, if you are in African companies, you will not get the preferential tariff because you are an African company. You get them because you are processing actually in Africa, which means if you are an African company, let's say Amarula, but you open your business in China, you are not doing the processing actually in Africa, you will not be able to get it. The same will apply for a Chinese or a European company. If they come and set up business in Africa, they produce significantly, transform the goods in Africa, they will get the AfCFTA preferential treatment because they are actually processing in Africa. So the rule of origin will not be attached to your name or where you are from, but where you actually are processing your goods. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Komi, for that clarification. So we're really talking about production on the continent, and that's, of course, creating jobs, adding value to the things we produce here. So it's very critical that we're talking about production on the continent. So I hope you are all paying attention because we have a pop quiz. So Valencia, can we please get that poll up here to see what we've learned so far? So please take a moment to fill out this short quiz, and then we will show the results. So in each question is asking whether this situation complies with the AfCFTA rules of origin or not. I think if you don't see the quiz pop up on your screen, you can select the polls option, or you can click on more and then polls, and it should come up there. We're on poll number 2. Please click on the polls icon at the bottom of your screen, or more and then polls. If you can't see it, I will send it to you after the session. Please mute if you are not speaking. I think we'll just give you 30 more seconds. Great, so Valencia, can we see the results of the poll? Great, so Komi, what do you think?
Yes, a quick one, yeah. The first one, I think, yeah, of course, participants, you know, some of you are learning this rule of origin for the first time, so it's okay if you haven't found the result. But the first case where you have a livestock like cattle raised in Niger, exported into Nigeria market for financial consumption. So remember, on the theoretical aspect, that is wholly obtained because you getting the raw material in Niger, the input, which is here cattle, and then you have it exported into Nigeria, which is also AfCFTA member state. Then this one is yes. So again, 84% of people participants have responded correctly. So congrats for those who have who got it right. The second one, tea in bulk. That is a bit complex. But here you have tea in bulk, which is imported from China by a South African-based company, further prepare tea bags into a factory in Joburg, and intend to have that tea bag exported to now Angola markets, to the African market. The issue here is the input, the tea is processed, is imported, so it's grown certainly in China. What is happening actually within AfCFTA markets is just to put them in a bag. So that is not a substantial transformation. So response here should be no. And again, the majority, 61%, have got it right. In terms of the cocoa bean example here, which is a bit complex, I do agree. You have the cocoa beans from Ghana. They're exported to Brazil. So the processing happened actually in Brazil, which is not part of the AfCFTA. So what you got from the processing will not be considered as coming from Africa, then you will not get the preferential treatment. But you know, so the response is no. Again, the majority have found it. The latest one here is copper. So you got copper mined in DRC, processed into wire in South Africa and Namibia. So it's clearly yes, and again 93%. So well done. For those of you who have not got it right, don't be discouraged. It's a process, and we will all get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Komi. I think that was a really engaging session and very practical as well. So now I'd like to move on to another colleague, Mia from ECA, who will give us a short understanding of the role of youth in the AfCFTA. And hopefully this will be valuable for all of you who are participating today, so you can see yourselves in the agreement. So Mia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nadia. I hope everyone can hear me all right. First of all, thank you so much for joining. It's really great to see so many people joining their first session of this webinar. So we hope that we are able to communicate some of all these opportunities the AfCFTA create, and especially the important role the African youth plays in making sure that the AfCFTA is implemented successfully. So these are some of the things I will be presenting for you today. I will be brief because we are running out of time, so I will be quick and efficient. Okay. So one of the reasons that the AfCFTA is is important for youth is that informal, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, they account for 80% of Africa's businesses. And many of these businesses are led by youth and women. So, and when you are working in informal, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise, you tend to lack access. You are working you are getting smaller wages than necessary. It is you are not paying taxes. There are a lot of disadvantages of being an informal, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. And the informal economy in Africa, it creates around 20 to 75% of jobs, which is quite massive numbers. And some of the unfortunate thing and the challenges for the youth in Africa is the disparity between education and unemployment. For instance, youth have access to better education, but more and more, but unemployment is also high. So there really is this disparity between education and the requirements of the employers. For instance, unemployment rates is among 15 to 24-year-olds with advanced education are often higher than for those with a basic education. And there are some constraints to this informality, and it creates increased financial stress due to lack of access to finance, lack of access to markets. Informal businesses are lacking access to information, network skills, and this is also the challenges the youth is facing. And the lack of this massive lack of inclusion of youth, and in general the large part of informal enterprises in Africa, this lacking inclusion in trade, it limits the structural transformation of economies, and therefore it limits the socioeconomic benefits that creates. So youth is really, and it's very important to make sure that youth and the informal enterprises are being incentivized to formalize so that they can get access to finance, and that markets can be developed, and technology as well. And so youth will actually, because youth is playing such a massive role in the economy on the informal side, it's really important to make sure that youth is included. And this is what the AfCFTA hopefully will be able to attract youth in, so that they can, so that the informal enterprises led by youth will be incentivized to formalize. So Marlit has had the same slide, so I'm not going to go too much into depth, but just to reiterate that what the AfCFTA does on the trade in goods protocol is that it, with its removal of tariffs and non-tariff barriers, market or small enterprises led by youth and in general, they will have access to wider markets. So when a business doesn't have to pay tariffs to sell or buy products from different markets, they will be able to access and compete on a more similar basis as with the national companies. So in that sense, they will have access to much wider markets, which will enable them to develop their businesses, develop their regional value chains, and then expand their sectors. And this will eventually also create more jobs for the youth. So there really are some strong incentives for youth-led businesses to harness the removal of non-tariff barriers and access the wider markets. So youth is really key to ensure that the AfCFTA is being implemented successfully. First of all, because youth is the majority of the population in Africa, and it will continue to be so for them for the next many generations. Moreover, youth has a some technical capabilities and are now more capable of harnessing the digital environment. So youth will really play a key role to harness the benefits of digitalization. Also, youth are more innovative. In fact, youth are 1.6 times more likely to be entrepreneurs, which is really important to make sure that these capabilities of youth are harnessed to create the successful implementation of the AfCFTA. Youth is also very innovative, and they participate in the green economy. So youth is really key in order to address many of these challenges we have in the world with environment and developing economies based on new innovation and addressing social and economic problems. So youth will not only be important to ensure like quantitative implementation of the AfCFTA, but also to make sure that all these opportunities within greening the economy and harnessing innovation, building innovation and harnessing the digital economy, youth will play a key role in that. Some of the expected benefits we see for youth with the implementation of the AfCFTA is that it will be able to create more jobs in productive sectors and reduce youth unemployment. I said it before, but the AfCFTA in its trade protocol will address costs and barriers to trade, which means that youth hopefully will be able to harness more of these different barriers that there are. Also, with the increasing digitalization and the digital economy protocol of the AfCFTA, there will be a stronger digital economy in Africa, and it will also help youth address some of the structural challenges youth face to trade. So when you trade digitally, what's the word? The disadvantage of youth when they are in digital trade, or the benefits of digital trade, is that you cannot separate like the ages, and so people will not unfavor youth when they are trading digitally. So some of these barriers will be addressed by trading more and more digitally. Some of the other areas we are also expecting to see the AfCFTA benefit youth is to support value addition through regional value chains. With the lowering of tariffs and the access to wider markets, youth will be able to develop their value chains if they're working in different kinds of trade and goods, and if they're developing a product, they will be able to optimize efficiency and benefit their own value chains and build regional value chains by taking in African products instead of taking in products from countries beyond Africa. And some of the benefits will also include more access to finance from youth, skill upgrading, and capacity building. However, these are some of the issues that must be addressed particularly for youth. And that's also why we have the Women and Youth in Trade protocol. So with the Women and Youth in Trade protocol, which you've already been introduced to, will hopefully be able to address some of these particular barriers which youth are facing to trade. So it's important that access to finance and the skills development is being addressed for youth in order to allow youth to really harness these opportunities on the AfCFTA. Some of the policy actions that we recommend to make sure that these benefits are harnessed is to close the gap in access to finance for youth, build trade, export and trading capacity of SMEs and youth-led businesses, support youth and SME participation in regional value chains, corporate supply chains and public procurement, streamline border procedures to incentivize formalization, close the digital divide and leverage youth innovation to support participation in e-commerce and digital trade solutions. And lastly, to plan innovative AfCFTA sensitization among stakeholder groups and the inclusion of diverse voices in the national implementation efforts. So as youth, it's important that you use your voice and that you sensitize to your governments that these are the priorities, or that you have some priorities that are important to address for youth particularly. This was all for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mia. And I think that last point was great, to make sure that you guys have heard it. So use your voice, make sure that you're engaged in dialogue with your governments, with the other parts of the private sector, as civil society. Make sure that you're able to understand the agreement in a way that you can now advocate for implementation in a way that includes you. So thank you, Mia, for that. I'd now like to go to a really interesting presenter, Edith. Edith is actually a trader. She trades on the continent. She is an amazing entrepreneur that is involved in so many businesses I can't even count. And she's very inspirational. She's young, like you, and I am really excited to invite her to join us for the discussion on how she as an entrepreneur can leverage the AfCFTA and maybe provide some practical examples. Please mute. Thank you. And Edith, maybe you can provide some practical examples of how you've been able to grow your business through intra-African trade so that others can learn how to do it from you. So Edith, I welcome you. Please give us some insights from your view. Maybe I give you about 5 or 10 minutes.
Perfect. I think that is perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Edith Njage. I am a Kenyan born and bred. And I'm a social and serial entrepreneur. So meaning everything that I have been doing on the African continent has been running serial businesses, but then also at the same time, the social element of what I do. So like Nadia says, I've actually founded quite a few businesses and all of them have a footprint across the continent. The key thing with actually engaging, right, in continental business is that it changes the game. And just to give a few examples. So I founded my first company, Job Creation Limited, when I was 18 years old. The company is currently about to turn 9 years. So you can almost do the calculations. Women are not supposed to say their ages. So you can do the calculations on the back of your notebooks. But when I founded Job Creation Limited, the key objective was very simple. Building a youth-led sales force, right, that would move product or service on behalf of SMEs, businesses, and corporates across the continent. And what started out in Kenya, in Nairobi, is now currently in 13 markets. Our 13th market is Israel. So that's our only non-African market. Everything else is on the continent, and markets that traditionally Africans, we don't sing about. Everyone talks about Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, the big five, Egypt. But we have loved being in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in Djibouti, in Comoros. So I think just with that in mind, and just the jobs we've been able to create and how the sales force has grown. And today we're standing at slightly over 200,000 people under the job creation umbrella. So with that, I think for me, as I was building this, I wasn't ready for it. right? It sort of took over a life of its own. And when we talk about the AfCFTA, I'm so passionate about it because it solves a lot of the problems that our young people, right, within job creation face every single day. And I'll use an example. Ethiopia, beautiful market. I love it. I love it. I can live in Addis my whole life and I'd be the happiest person on this planet. But Ethiopia has an issue with their banks, right? They don't have international banks. So if you're essentially doing business, how do you get money in and out of the country? Okay, so that's one challenge. And I know with the AfCFTA, right, and us becoming one Africa, these are things that would be solved. I'll use another example. I was going to Zimbabwe and we were considering opening up that market. Beautiful market. I love Zimbabwean people. They're the most down-to-earth, open-hearted, open-homed people you'll ever meet. So I hope there's some of them in the audience to send my love. But when I went to Zim, I needed to go with dollars, right? So immediately at the bank, I changed from Kenyan shillings, okay? And then I buy dollars. And when I get to Zim, there's a limit in terms of how many dollars you can come in with and how many dollars you can come out with. The other challenge also still within things like this, right? Other markets, assuming I'm going to even somewhere like, let's say South Africa, right? And I need to get rands. So what happens? The bank will change for me, okay, just within their institution, they'll change it from Kenyan shillings to the USD to rands. By the time I'm landing in South Africa, I've lost money twice. So these are issues that are faced even within the EAC, because we have teams that maybe move from Tanzania into Kenya, move from Uganda into Tanzania. If there are people from Tanzania, nawapenda sana with all of my heart. So even within the EAC, prior to AfCFTA and prior to all the progress that the EAC region has made with the regional bloc, right? And even how integrated the borders are. The borders in EAC are something that ECOWAS, SADC, and the rest need to really take a look at and copy. But at the same time, if women, for example, within the team are moving across the border, there are times you'll come and they'll tell me these stories. They'll say this and this happened to me. You know, this corruption, this happened, you know, all these different factors. And we don't talk about it, but all these things, they hinder trade. And it's not the tariff barriers per se, it's the non-tariff barriers. So I think for me, just to see this one Africa, I think would be the biggest joy. I know that within the continent, we have been separated. It was not the intent. Africa, we were not like this. There was no Francophone, Lusophone, Anglophone, none of those phones existed. You know, these phones were brought by colonization. But now we're dropping the phones and we're saying that we are Pan-Africanist. And for me, even when I introduce myself, I say I am from Kenya, born and bred, but I'm an African. So even for you, it's fine. You acknowledge which land you're from, but who are you? You're not a Zambian. You're not a Ugandan. You're not from Sudan. You are an African. Your homeland is your homeland, but you are African before you are from any other country. And I think starting to acknowledge that makes such a big difference. The other venture that I set up, Ariel for Africa, we work with entrepreneurs, right? So I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs because I'm also a founder, so I understand the struggle. And when I spend time with founders, there are two key problems. Number one, a lot of founders are in the wrong market for their product or service. It's not that your product or service is bad, it's that you're in the wrong market. But how do you remedy this? You remedy this by understanding just because you are from a certain area, country, region, does not mean that you have to service or you have a solution for that country, area, region. And that's why it's so important to embrace the AfCFTA and to make it a reality and to understand it simply, right? So in a lot of my conversations around the AfCFTA, I just try to break it down for people into simple things to understand that the goal is that we do business together. So when we started job creation, for example, because I had one of the speakers say this, we had a lot of our providers, right, suppliers, provide good or service from China, Europe, America. But this last 2 years, we put our foot down as the board and we said, you know what, we're taking African product or service only. And right now we have been onboarding African businesses that are trying to get their product or service into other markets. And because we have young people in all these different countries, it simplifies things for them. And also because now with AfCFTA, it's almost providing light at the end of the tunnel, because now you no longer have to deal with all this, is it TBS in Tanzania? So there's Tanzania Bureau of Standards, there's KEBS, Kenya Bureau of Standards, everyone has their own standards. So AfCFTA is beautiful because it brings everything together. And now it allows for solutions like ours to serve Africans and African businesses, not just African young people, but African businesses. So having the AfCFTA and everything that it represents, there's so much within it that makes such a beautiful difference. I'll use another example. If we're doing any sort of work, be it strategic alliance, joint venture, anything like that, let's assume we're doing it with Nigeria, okay? So we would have, because our entity, say, is registered in Uganda, right? So how it works is the Ugandan lawyers would come. So you're paying lawyers in Uganda, then you're paying the lawyers in, assuming Nigeria or Ghana, right? And then now they have conversations, and then a document is signed. And it has to cater to laws on both sides, or it will say this is the jurisdiction on the basis of Ghanaian law. But you see, this is why the AfCFTA is so beautiful, because then it brings in the element where legal professionals, doctors, once you're certified in West Africa, you can come to East Africa and offer your services on this side. Right? You don't have to come and do a new law degree. You don't have to come and do a new school of law. You don't have to come and do a new medical degree. As you are, you're picked. So then you begin to have African talent that is really African talent, not a Kenyan doctor, an African doctor, okay? Not an Eritrean lawyer, an African lawyer, okay? Not a Libyan professor, an African professor. And you see, this is why this One Africa is so beautiful. And this is why as us, as young people, I always say, I'm not waiting for my government. I'm not waiting for amazing organizations like UNECA and UNDP to do their part. I'm going to do my part. And what is my part? I show up and I have conversations like this. What is my part? If I meet someone and they don't have as much background on AfCFTA as I do, I tell them what I know. So I share what I have. What is my part? I question my government officials and I say, okay, you've done negotiations. You've gone for negotiations. What have you negotiated for agriculture? What have you negotiated for manufacturing? What have you negotiated for all the different sectors, for services, right? And then for people who are in the service space, it's understanding that for you, it's the easiest, right? Product is different. For service, it's the easiest. And why is it the easiest? Because you can leverage on the franchise model, the strategic alliance model, and the joint venture model, and you don't per se have to go around wondering, do I need to register? You don't have all of these bans on what you're doing. Things are simple. It's easier to get it across, and you don't have to do it directly. So for example, we set up a hub, or rather we're in the process of setting up a hub in Libya. Do I know how to speak Arabic? No, I wish I did. But it's gonna happen. How? Because we collaborated, right, with the Libyan university. So it's getting to a place of seeing, how do you, especially in the service space, do the most with what you have? And then Africans, I will tell you something very simple before I close. The AfCFTA is here to sift. What do I mean? It is competition for the fittest, because now you're no longer competing against your local people, okay? So if you're from Somalia, you're no longer just competing with Somalis, okay? If you're from Zanzibar area, you know, not mainland, you're no longer just competing in the Zanzibar area. If you're from, I don't know, Senegal, you're no longer just competing with people within Senegal. You're now competing on a continental level, Okay. And I know people talk about the Nigerians and they talk about Kenyans and they talk about the South Africans, but some of these people are sharks. So now you sit and you start to ask yourself, okay, so this is my market. This is where I've been. Now I'm competing on a continental level. And I need to make sure that I am able to hit that mark and to be exceptional at everything that I do. So you have to be exceptional, whether it means you learn, whether it means you spend more time on the ground. People always say, okay, I have peanuts. I'm trying to get my peanuts into Sierra Leone. That's great. But have you been there? Okay. Before you get your peanuts, have you been there? Have you done any sort of market analysis on the ground? Has your foot hit forget Google. Auntie Google, she doesn't know the way we know. You put your footprint on the ground, right? If there's an African country you're trying to penetrate, I always tell my people, you go to the land, and Africa, we have a lot of power in the land, and you step on the land. And if that's where you want to prosper, to thrive, you say, I am claiming this land. Then you spend time with the people and you love on the people and you get to know the people. They will not buy from you if they do not love you. It's that simple. That's Ubuntu, that's Africans. So get to know the people and then try and sell your product. But don't send it across in a trailer. You've missed it. You've missed it. So that's always my advice for young Africans. Let the AfCFTA be yours. There are organizations I've seen in the comments. There's the AfCFTA Youth Advisory Council. I actually serve there as vice chairperson. Please check them out across all of the platforms. You'll find Ikoyaka. And if you're not part of any country chapter, or if you don't know who your country champions are, because we're all fighting for implementation on the ground within our various countries. If you don't know what's happening, just research, okay? Just look for Ikoyaka, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's everywhere. You'll find it. And thanks to ULEAD for supporting us in that venture of just making sure that we hold our governments accountable and we implement, not waiting for government, not waiting for anyone else, but implement the Africa we want to see. Because the truth is, it's only me and you that will see it. You see us guys in 2030s, we're the ones that will still be alive for Vision 2063. The people who wrote Vision 2063, do you think they'll still be there? No, it's for me and you to see it, okay? So irregardless of how we look, just know Edith loves you all, and I want to see you all love the AfCFTA the way that I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Edith, for that really inspiring analysis of how to engage with new markets on the continent. What are, you talked about some of the challenges like currency exchange, but you also talked about some of the joys of doing business in other countries, of creating jobs, of what to do if you're in the wrong market. Move and try somewhere new. Visit the place, get to know people, collaborate with local partners. You also talked about creating a culture of excellence in your business. You talked also about holding your negotiators accountable and your policymakers accountable. And of course, the goal is to do more business together amongst all of you. So I think everyone has been inspired by your words, and we've had a lot of positive comments. People want to get in touch with you, and really, I think, identify with your story and your experience, and of course you're an inspiration. So thank you for joining us. I know we've really come to the end of our session. There's so many very interesting questions that were asked. For example, how will the AfCFTA support the development of agribusiness? What can be done in the financial services market? What are some of the non-tariff barriers and how we can address them? There was a question on green energy, on simplified trade regimes, trade between members and non-members, non-state parties of the agreement. So actually, I think we started a very interesting discussion. Of course, we have 3 more modules to go. So unfortunately, we won't be able to address all the questions, but I would like to invite our speakers to come in for a final word. Maybe Malet, let's start with you. If you can give us your final parting thoughts in 30 seconds.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you everyone also for the questions and participation through the chat. So I think what we can do maybe, because I've seen also several questions, is I don't know if we can collect those questions and maybe send a collective answer, if it's something that can be done. And thank you so much for all the participation, and yeah, let's hope we're going to work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Malad. So yes, I think we can exactly do that. We'll collect the questions. We'll try to answer them for the next module, and maybe make them available somewhere online, and just kind of collect them and see if we can answer them over time. Valencia, while we're going through the final comments, maybe you can pull up the final poll of the session. Komi, over to you.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. Great moderation as well as usual, and thanks YALDA also for the presentation, and Edith, very inspirational as well. I think that's great from you, and then I think the youth can see that things are happening, and sitting here at 9 p.m., maybe 10 p.m. For those who are in Kenya means you believe in the AfCFTA. Let's make it happen. Two quick one. There was one issue around the tea, arguing, yes, that's what happened between the custom authorities, the Chamber of Commerce, and the businesses. I have complied, I have not complied. So we can still discuss. But again, I think as Mahlet rightly pointed out, we can get all the questions, and then we will have consolidated responses. Then my last point, we are also learning geography. One of the youth said he always thought Nigeria was a state of Niger was a state of Nigeria, not knowing that there is a Niger. But actually, there are two are right. We have Niger as a country in West Africa, and we have a Niger state in Nigeria as well. So yeah, it was great to also learn a bit of geography. Thank you.
Thanks, Komi. It's the point of the session is learning, so it's really great that we're able to do this. Mia, over to you. Final thoughts.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you to everyone who's participated. I think I would like to encourage all of you participating in the webinar to seek engagement in the AfCFTA by all the different youth organizations who are working on the AfCFTA. I'm not going to mention specific ones, but I know that there has been some comments from particular youth organizations, and you can also just try and Google youth organizations on the AfCFTA and see what kind of role you can play. There are a lot of good work out there from youth organizations who are doing a lot to create advocacy on behalf of youth. And then also follow ECA and some of the other UN organizations and the AfCFTA Secretariat. We are doing a lot of courses to support capacity building of SMEs, entrepreneurships. So we encourage you to apply for these kind of webinars, programs, so that you can learn even more about how to build your capacity to leverage the AfCFTA.
Thanks, Mia. Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the challenges you raised was a lack of access to networks for the youth. So definitely, make the effort to be connected so that you have some advocacy within those networks. And finally, Edith, last but not least, certainly, please give us your final parting thoughts. Admin, can you please mute the participants? Great. So Edith, your final thoughts to send us off tonight.
Yeah, I would say just be the change you want to see. So if there's something about the AfCFTA or its implementation that you're not for, then be that change, right? If you want to see better implementation in your country, be that change that you want to see. It starts with you. You only see a problem because you're meant to solve it. That's what I realized very early on. So if you have seen it, I might not have seen it, but if you have seen it, it's because you're the one who has been gifted that problem to solve. So just be the change that you want to see. Don't wait for anybody else. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thanks, Edith. I love that. If you've seen a problem, it's because you're meant to solve it. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining today. I'd like to thank YALDA, UNDP, and our other partners for putting together this session for us. I hope that you've all found it enjoyable and insightful and learned with us. We certainly have learned with all of you as well, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you over the next few modules of this program. As Mia said, please find us online. All of us here have, we're at your service. We have programs available for you to make sure that you can leverage the AfCFTA as best as possible. And of course, we'd love to hear feedback from you on how we can do more, what we can do to better support you. Valencia, can we see the results of the final poll? So I think we can see here. We're very, very grateful to all of you for participating, and I hope we've really been able to contribute to your better understanding of the AfCFTA and what you can do now as a result of learning about this agreement and the next steps. So thanks to all of you for participating. Thanks, Valencia. Thanks, YALDA. Thanks my colleagues at ECA and UNDP, and we look forward to seeing you for the next module. Have a good evening.
And thank you, Nadia, for moderating. Woohoo!
Always.